Are the mountains alive? When I was a little kid, I never questioned whether or not the mountains were alive. I just knew they were. So I didn't even think to ask. But as a thinking adult, I realized I'd lost some of that sense of mystery and wonder. So I decided to see if I could recapture it. The Fujifilm X-Pro3 had just arrived at our lab, and I knew I had the right tool for the job. It's not that easy to describe the difference in how Fujifilm X-series cameras process images. Their X-Trans sensors are made differently, certainly, and you can find plenty of articles about that on our website. But it's the images themselves that really showcase the difference. For me, there just seems to be more three-dimensionality, and certainly richer and deeper color representation. I just love the way the images come to life. And that's just the beginning. So of course, I was thrilled to be using their latest X-series model to try and achieve my own goal of attempting to tease some magic from the southern Appalachian mountains in photographic form. These are the same mountains I grew up coming to see as a kid. So for my first stop along the way, I decided to try my hand at a place I'd never been before. And it proved to be a very intriguing one indeed. So I'm here today in the Jocassee Gorge with the Fuji X-Pro3. I've got it paired today with the classic wide-angle 10 to 24 millimeter f4 Fujinon. A really nice combination for balance and weight, and a good overall system for a place like this. I briefly mentioned it earlier, but I can't say enough about how much I love the way Fujifilm cameras render color. There's something almost otherworldly about the images. Most of the documentary video for this piece was shot using the video-centric, weather-resistant Fujifilm X-H1, while paired with the excellent Fujinon 16 to 55 millimeter f2.8 weather-resistant lens. My ancestors settled in the North Carolina Appalachians in the 1700s. But why would they have come this far inland? That would have been a very, very long way from the coast in that time period. But something must have drawn them here. In pondering my overall question some more, I thought I'd start by photographing the obvious. The vegetation up here is certainly alive, and so I headed my trusty 4Runner north, towards Wolf Mountain. The ferns and the rhododendrons flourish up here and are bountiful, keeping the mountains decorated and colorful most of the year. You can round a turn and come across all kinds of visual delights up here, and it's nice to have a versatile camera to capture the wealth of extremes. And of course, the moss is alive and definitely thrives up here. I found a sort of mini moss forest along the way, and it's one that I'm sure would make Bilbo Baggins smile. And thanks to some very forward-thinking people along the way over time, there's a ton of protected land up here. And that fact obviously bodes well for the mountain wildlife. In pondering my question even more during my various mountain drives, it was obvious as well that the towns are very much alive too. And certainly the mountain people. And of course, that goes double for the wonderful array of domesticated animals in the higher regions. They seem happy with their lot in life, and they're a friendly bunch at that. So as my first day drew to a close, I'd seen and photographed some very enjoyable things. But my question, the question was still rummaging around my head, and the answer was evading me as I nodded off to sleep for the night. On the second day, I woke up and realized that it was time to start asking some tougher questions. I kept on driving through the valleys and wondering, what about the things we're not so sure about? I had to ask myself, is the fog alive? And then, how about some of the old trees up here, long presumed dead? They're supposedly without life, but I'm not always so sure. They've often lived very long lives, much longer than any of us. And some of them, well, some of them seem very present to me. The lakes and streams up here sure do seem to have lives of their own. People tend to think of the ocean as alive. So why not the bodies of water in the mountains? It seemed like time to drive into deeper waterfall territory. The waterfalls are certainly alive and well up here, and they're a definite draw for both photographers and sightseers alike, including yours truly. If you want to see the water flowing a bit in your own photographs, just turn your shutter speed dial to a 1/15 of a second or slower, and either shoot still with a stabilized lens as I did, or with a tripod. The X-Pro3 and the XF 10 to 24mm f4 Fujinon, the combined weight of this pairing is only 2 pounds, or just about 900 grams. So you can forge streams all day long carrying this little rig around. The X-Pro3 doesn't have onboard IS, so you'll want to grab a lens with OIS like the 10 to 24mm f4 if you feel like you're going to need it. I did need it for some of these shots because I wanted a slower shutter speed on some of them to give the water some movement, but I still wanted to shoot handheld, and so the OIS came in very handy. This tranquil little lake allowed me to let the X-Pro3 stretch its legs just a bit in the color saturation department. In addition to using the classic Velvia film simulation, I also experimented with the color chrome effect here. So my favorite thing about Fujifilm cameras is on the outside, it's the wonderful, large, tactile metal exposure dials. They just feel fantastic and terrific. Makes it easy to make changes on the fly. It's very old school. They do it like no one else, and I really love it. The Blue Ridge Mountains are technically the 3rd oldest mountain chain in the United States, and are the 9th oldest chain on Earth, which means that some of the larger rock formations are certainly quite old. But some of them sure do have a presence to me. Call it a comforting presence in this case. A life force. I grew up being told ghost stories around the campfire up here by my dad, and they were good ones. Not that I've ever caught a spirit on film in a purely visible sense, but every now and then, don't you sometimes look at a photograph and feel a presence there? The best time to feel the mountains is when you're by yourself or off shooting in a remote location. That's when the mountains will talk to you, really talk to you, and you'll find that the forests and the old ruins have plenty to say. The Rocky Mountains are more majestic, but the Appalachians are much older. They're like an old soul to me. And like great art, the mountains are not linear. They wind and they breathe. The Cherokee believe this mountain range was formed by an enormous bird whose wings form the valleys. Well, that works for me. Are the mountains alive? Yes. Yes, they most certainly are.